Welcome back to another episode of Inside Line. I'm here with Nick Sargent, and we are so excited to be able to connect with you today. This show is all about being able to keep two-way conversation going, whether it's impromptu or a planned interview. And we have something that I think is super meaningful to the industry, and it definitely is to my co-host here, Nick Sargent. Welcome.
Thank you, Kristen. Good to see you again, as always.
Yeah, you as well. So I think we should just drop right in.
Yeah, let's just get right to it. It's smarter to hit it on the head than delay. I think part of why we created Inside Line was for SIA to really communicate industry issues, industry opportunity, celebration of our industry, and really be on top of what's happening. And clearly, it's been seen already that passing of Robert Redford in the last 2 days. As a to some might seem not of a big deal, but to others it's an extremely large deal. And I really wanted to celebrate his life and contribution to winter sport. We know Robert Redford from all the movies that you've been seeing on social media, all the clips that are being played, and it's so cool to see all of these old films and even maybe not so old films for people like you and I. But I think it's really cool that he had a storied career. And most importantly, his passion was in winter sport, from owning a ski resort to being a lifelong skier, and even coming out and saying skiing was his first love outside of car racing and the arts. And I think that's really cool. And that's a really cherishing area that we don't get to comment on very often. We don't have industry leaders in this space with such celebrity as he has. And I think it's really important to reflect on his passion for Sundance, the resort that he created, skiing, the industry, the multiple friends and family he had within the sport. I'm just seeing the outpouring of social posts from Lindsey Vonn, from Powder Magazine, from Warren Miller, et cetera, et cetera. And again, we don't have these moments in our sport, so I think it's cool to celebrate it.
I'm so glad that you wanted to pull this show together because so often we have just a bit of a dark backdrop of news. And this is not good news by any stretch, but something really important to bring up. And I think there's a lot of good to share here. And I just want to say, when we were in Sundance together in March at the Global Summit for SIA, this is how you kicked it off. And I was hoping you could share a little bit about the really quick personal interaction that you had with Robert Redford, but more so like how he affected you at that point in your life. And I think the direction you ended up taking in your career.
Yeah, for sure. For those that know me, know I've been in winter sport my whole career. For those that know me, know I'm originally from Vermont, and I grew up skiing as an activity. Wasn't even a sport. My parents brought me to the resort at 8 and picked me up at 4, along with a handful of friends, and that's what we did. And certainly the sport of snow and skiing and eventually snowboarding has had a huge impact and effect on my life and my children and the family, so on and so forth. But I think most importantly to me, I was young and I saw the movie Downhill Racer, and I was pulled in immediately, and I couldn't believe the story. I couldn't believe the actors, and I didn't know who Robert Redford was. I just knew that this was a really cool movie, but also the romanticism of the European sport and the Americans participating in that sport, the edginess, the cockiness, the swagger that these athletes had. And it really affected me and touched me in a way that I didn't realize it was going to be a lifelong journey for me at that point. But it was part of the fuel that got me interested in this sport. So I think it was really played a pivotal role. And I've seen that
Set a
movie.
bit of a theater for you, right? I mean, if you think about, we always like to kind of kid ourselves, Nick and I, like we did see a lot of ABC's Wide World of Sports. the thrill of victory, the agony of defeat. Most of America probably saw skiing as that, right? And what you're telling me is you were brought into a whole theater, a whole dimension of this sport that I think a lot of Americans didn't know about or see back then.
No, not at all. It was a quiet sport. It was huge in Europe. It wasn't hardly anything here in the US. And it was that first touch into something that was so real and so raw. And it was so authentic. Later in life, I read that Robert Redford had embedded himself in the US ski team for a year to really get into the role and figure out the sport, the location, get comfortable in Europe. And I thought that was the coolest part of that film.
Totally. So, what about one of your younger jobs that you had?
Yeah. So, later in life, when I was just getting started in this industry, I worked for two friends of mine, Brian Burnett and Will Goldsmith, and they had just opened a very high end ski tuning store in Park City called Rennstall. If anyone knows anything about ski racing in German, Rennstall is race room in German, and that was my first introductory to getting into the professional aspect of ski racing and tuning. I grew up as a ski racer and tuned my own skis, and I always had an interest, but this was taking it to a whole new level. Fast forward, a person comes into the store and asks to get their skis tuned, and I naively say, "Absolutely, we'll take your skis. We'll give you the World Cup ski tune." And I said, "What's your name?" And he said, "Bob." I go, "Great. What's your last name?" "Redford." "Fantastic. How does tomorrow sound to pick him up?" And he said, "Great. I'll see you then." He left the store. I turned around to the owner, Will Goldsmith, and he said, "Nick, do you know who that is?" And I said, looking at the sheet, "Yeah, Bob Redford." He's like, "Idiot, Robert Redford. You didn't see the gold locks. You didn't see the chiseled face." I said, "No, I was too busy looking at his skis and getting the paperwork, so I didn't screw up." So I wasn't reprimanded by you later. Long story short, I walked out of the store and I just saw him walk down the street, and I was completely mesmerized. I couldn't believe that was almost one of my first celebrity sightings, 50%. So I said, I'm going to tune his skis. I've been learning how to tune skis now for a little while. I'm feeling like I'm on top of my game. I think I can take the downhill racer to the next level. So I spent the evening and I tuned his skis and did the best job that I could do. And I took a piece of tape and I put it over the ski right above the logo. And I wrote in black magic marker, downhill racer rules. Went home at
Great.
night, came in the next morning early. I'm not going to miss this moment. He came back at some point during the day. I was ready for him. I was waiting. He came in and he said, "I'm here to pick up my skis. My name is Bob." I said, "I know who you are." I grabbed the skis off the rack. I walk around the counter, put them in front of him with the sticker facing him. And he looked at me and he said, "What do you know about downhill ski racer? You're too young." I said,
Ah,
"I know everything about it. It's my favorite movie. I've seen it 100 times. It took me a moment to recognize you, but I am more than honored to tune your skis." He said, "Well, that's fantastic." And like a pro, he turned the skis over. He ran his finger across the edge. He said, "I think this is going to work." Meanwhile, I'm like, "Oh my God, what if he says they're not sharp enough? What if he said, the bases are dry?" He took out some money from his wallet, and I said, "This is on the house. This is my pleasure. There's no possible way I could charge you." He said, "Do you know who I am?" I said, "I absolutely know who you are, and I could not charge you." He took the cash and he put it in the tip jar, and he
okay.
said, "I really appreciate it. Thank you very much. Have a good day." Walked out.
Oh,
So that
that's
was
so
my
cool.
that was my starstruck aha moment, and certainly growing up, having watched Downhill Racer, being a fan, and then later in life, actually getting to tune his skis, and briefly meet him. I would highly doubt he would ever have remembered that. And why would you? But nevertheless, it was cool to a young kid who is just, putting his left foot in front of his right foot.
That's so cool, and obviously, like, it made a huge mark, like, having the event at Sundance and having that be the way you kicked it off. And then also, as you said, like there's a big swath of our community who's reaching out and wanting to connect about this. It's like a whole facet of him that most of his fan base probably doesn't even know existed in terms of how he touched people.
Yeah, I'm really interested, and I've been following social closely, just out of curiosity. And in all the news today, this is actually, not great news about him, but it's wonderful news about his storied career. And we don't have people in our industry that are full cinematic celebrities, artists, resort owners, lifetime skiers, and have created their life around winter. You have celebrities that enjoy skiing and snowboarding. You have celebrities that visit resorts. I can't think of another celebrity that is a resort owner, is living it, owning it, maybe backing it up, created it, living it, owning it is probably better said. But I think it's really cool. And we've had the enjoyment of going to Sundance. We've had the opportunity to enjoy his vision and what he created. And if you haven't been to Sundance Resort, it is hands down the coolest resort, the coolest location, the most unique and breathtaking views of the Timpanogos. So much that we did a industry event there the last 3 years, and we've hosted our board meetings there. And it's been fun for us and for me to show this resort to our industry, shockingly, who had never been there before.
I was one of those. And would you mind, just before we wrap up here, telling this story that as you know it, of when he first saw that canyon and maybe the vision there in terms of turning it into a resort?
I mean, I've learned a lot more about his history. I mean, there's a lot of history at Sundance Resort that you can read and you can see and you can enjoy. But, as the story goes, he saw it and was so taken away by its beauty. And he was able to buy, land small chunks at a time. I believe his first purchase was 2 acres, and named it after the movie Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid, Sundance as we know it today, and eventually ended up owning 6,000 acres in that specific valley. And I think that's a really cool testament to the person that he is as a conservationist, as a visionary, and really knowing what he wanted as an individual. And certainly the pulls of celebrity can take you anywhere, but he chose that valley as his home. And what an incredible story. And I think it's important that we celebrate that story and we don't let that fade away, and certainly not into a sunset. So, I think I was just so compelled when I learned of his death, and I was sad to hear that he had passed. And I think it's one of those things. You have people in your life, and you have, whether you know them or you're a fan or you're a fan of their art or have not, but these are the people that are out there making opportunities for themselves, and then the indirect opportunity for their fan base to find their path and their footing. And I think that's really cool. And we don't come by that every day. So I thought it was a good way for us to lean into Inside Edge, a responsibility for SIA, and a personal connection that I've had with Downhill Racer, and obviously certain huge fan of all of his movies, but Downhill Racer was the one that really kicked it off for me.
You and many, many others out there. And again, what I love about this is the opportunity to contribute to the community conversation. That's what this show is all about. So please know that
100%.
we plan on doing more of these. And Nick, I'm so glad that you had the idea to pull this show together today. Thank you. And we'll have more episodes teed up for you here shortly.
Looking forward to it. Thanks, Kristen.
Thank you.